Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to another exciting episode of Measuring Dev Skills with CodeSignal. Today we're going to be talking about backend dev skills specifically. Now I know if you've seen any of the previous episodes, you might be looking at this and thinking, well, we've done some database stuff before, but hey, I'm a backend dev and my responsibilities comprise more than just writing queries. There's more to it than just that. So that's what we really want to explore in today's episode. So we'll go ahead and select our task, which today is going to be this one called Hotel Residence. One thing you might notice is that all of these tasks, these are all ones that we've done before, they're all labeled. So we've got user interface, database, DevOps. We've got a bunch of different types. Today we're going to be doing an algorithmic type. So we'll confirm that to load the task up. So before we go any further, one thing to point out is this is all very familiar. This is the IDE that we're used to dealing with. We've got our task description on the left side of the screen over here. We've got an area for like our console over here. We might as well go ahead and run the tests and see what we're looking at in this case. Part of the reason I mentioned that this is an algorithmic challenge is we're going to have a little more leeway in terms of how we approach this challenge. So notice right now we're just console logging hello world. There it is, hello world. But what we really want to be doing is getting some information from an API and then using that information to query a database and get some info from there that we're then going to return as like the final value. So in this case, like in the first example, we don't see what we're going to get from the API. That's the surprise, I guess. But the point is we're going to make a call to that. It's going to give us some information. Specifically, it should give us a first and last name of one of the residents that we're looking for. And we can use that in order to get their room info just by doing our database query. So that's what we're up against in this particular problem. Now I'm looking at this and thinking, well, normally I like to use JavaScript. It's what we've used for most of the other challenges. But in this case, I think maybe it would be more suitable to use something like Python. So we're going to switch to Python. And this is, I think, the first opportunity we've had to even mention this. But check out all these languages. Look at all the different languages we can use. So I think there's close to 40 of them here. I guess we could count them. But the point is, in this case, we're allowed to select whatever language we want. We could restrict it if we wanted to, if we're looking for a particular type of dev, proficiency in a particular type of language. But today, we're going to use Python. Okay, so notice they kind of give us like some of these built-ins. We didn't really have this with JavaScript because we're not going to be importing any libraries or anything like that. But for Python, where it's a little more natural to do so, we're probably going to use a few of these. So specifically, we'll use requests. We'll use mysql.connector in order to make the API call and then in order to query the database respectively. We're not going to use pandas. That's more for data kind of stuff. Okay, so basically if we wanted to connect to the API first of all, which is probably a good first step, we might say something like, let's say resident, right? Because that's what we're getting information about. We're going to use requests for this. We'll do a .get, and that's where we'll put in like the URL that we're given, this over here. So we'll paste that in right here, and it should probably be a string. And then we'll just say .json from there. And at this point, that should be giving us our information that we're looking for, or at least the first bit of information. So let's see if we can just print that out and see what we actually get from it. Hopefully that works. I guess we'll find out. But anyway, that's just sort of like step one. So like we talked about before, if you're a back-end dev, you're doing more than just writing database queries and stuff like that. So this kind of more closely resembles the type of back-end work that our candidates are likely going to be hired to do. Okay, so we're actually getting some information here. We're getting the resident's last and first name respectively here. So looks like we're talking about Michael Rogers, which makes sense because that is the individual in room number 103, which is the information we really want to get. Now, as it turns out, like doing database queries, actually connecting to the database is a little more complicated than it would be in something like just one of these database challenges that we've looked at before. So I'm not going to write out all the code for this, but hey, here's one I prepared earlier. So this should allow us to sort of get all the information we're looking for. Maybe we could say like data is assigned the value of, and then we'll just grab like the first bit of information. So we'll say like row at 0 for row in cursor.fetch all. Bit of a list comprehension there. And then we'll just say print data. We'll see what we get from it. And hopefully it'll be somewhat what we're looking for. So basically, yeah, there we go. So we would have to actually, parse this out and pick it apart, maybe say like, well, if there's nothing in there, then it's no rooms. If there's multiple, then it's many rooms. So notice we've got tests for that, right? If we just got the information for this one room, then we'd probably pass this first test, but we wouldn't get the other two because, not enough info there. We could say something like, print no rooms. I think it's like sentence case. If the length of the data is equal to 0, else just print, the data itself kind of thing. We could do something like that, and hopefully that would allow us to pass one of the tests. While we wait for that, we might as well talk about what's going on in the background over here. Oh, yeah, and there we go. We're passing one of the tests. So, good. So you might notice that these tests take a little while, that the usual time limit is a bit higher for something like this. And I guess that makes sense because there's a lot that needs to actually happen here. So right off the bat, this part over here, we're making an API call. You'll notice we're calling localhost. So we're not reaching out into any like external APIs, which allows us to sort of process this a little faster. We're basically just using the internal CodeSignal API. So it's the same sort of syntax, the same process that we would follow to actually make one of these API calls, except, some external APIs are going to have limits on usage. Some of them are going to cost money. It might take a really long time to get the response back. So this allows us to practice the same skills without any of those potential issues that I just mentioned. From there, we're able to query the database. We've looked at this before in terms of like how this works with our code runners. So the database is instantiated in a Docker image and using a Docker container. It loads up all this information and then it allows us to query it. So since there's more going on here, it does take a longer time, which is part of the reason there are fewer tests over here, because otherwise, it would take longer to execute. But you'll notice we can be clever about how we choose the test to make sure that it covers all the cases that we're looking for. So this is one where we're just grabbing the room number from this particular individual here. We've got another case over here where there is no room number for the individual we're looking for, and a case where there's more than one. In this case, I'm assuming it's Brian Harris we're looking at, right? So we have multiple rooms over here, and we're going to have to find a way to deal with that. So all of this more closely resembles the daily responsibilities of a back-end dev, more so than just looking at the database query. So we talked about this before in previous episodes, how it's nice that this platform allows us to really zoom in and really focus to get targeted assessment on one particular type of skill. So writing queries might be the skill that we're looking for. But we can see also that the reverse is true as well. We can look at the bigger picture. We can look at multiple skills sort of coming together into this one larger project. So if you want to make sure that you're looking for a candidate that kind of ticks all the boxes, so to speak, someone that can handle all of this stuff in one challenge, then this is probably a better fit for something like that, as opposed to if you're just trying to zoom in on one targeted kind of skill. So hopefully that demonstrates it. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, and I guess I'll see you again next week. Bye for now.